Time now to take an in-depth look at that oil disaster in the Gulf, and more specifically, its effects on tourism here in Florida and the Gulf Coast. Since the beginning, experts have predicted the impact would be huge. Tourism is one of the top sources of revenue in the Gulf region. Right now, indicators show double-digit declines in travel plans to the area. That's according to Oxford Economics in its report for the U.S. Travel Association. 5 months ago, this was the scene: fire on the water when the Deepwater Horizon oil rig exploded. That was back on April the 20th. 11 workers were killed in that blast. That rig burned for about 36 hours before sinking into the Gulf on April the 22nd. And the oil leaked for months before it was finally capped on July the 15th. As we've been reporting, the permanent fix for capping that well could be in place by Sunday. And while that oil hasn't reached most Florida beaches, just some of the panhandle, it could still cost us. In fact, Oxford Economics predicts the oil disaster could cost Gulf Coast communities more than $22.7 billion over the next 3 years. Joining me now to talk about the oil disaster, its effects on tourism, and yesterday's announcement by the administrator of the $20 billion recovery fund, Attorney Steve Yerrid, the governor's special counsel in the oil spill. Steve, thank you for stopping by. Always good to talk to you. All right, Feinberg was in Orlando yesterday. He's in Tallahassee today. Yesterday he said he's a little skeptical of these claims that are made from people that are not really on the coast. And it really sent a chill through the restaurant and motel owners.
Sure did, because he's got a very finite definition of what is a legitimate claim and what isn't.
Right.
Oil on the beach qualifies, no oil on the beach seemingly disqualifies. That's a very limited view and wrong.
Now, he says that he will reconsider some of these things that are being made by restaurant and motel owners because, you know, in all fairness, they want to be fair with this money, and I guess fair is a very important word in all
well,
this.
As I said yesterday, he indicated he's, quote, coming around. Well, he should have already been there.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people, certainly on the west coast of Florida, that can document business loss, hoteliers, restaurant owners that are clearly directly tied to the oil spill catastrophe, and those people have legitimate claims.
Absolutely. Okay, Oxford Economics did this great big study about the effect on tourism. It was prepared for the U.S. Travel Association. Let's talk about that. The impact of the oil spill, they figure, is going to be about $22.7 billion over the next 3 years. And
Huge.
I guess we hadn't looked down the line, and that's something you've got to be concerned about.
It's not only concerning, but that's in the status quo. Remember, we have some great dedicated scientists at USF, Miami, other institutions that are telling us about oil plumes. I read where there was a slick beneath the surface with dead shrimp and dead fish underneath it.
Right.
Who knows? I mean, Al, this thing is too fresh to say that's it, that's the damage. I still fear the ecological environmental impact may be much greater than what we're now being advised is occurring.
Okay, the Tourism Association, though, trying to get on record with somebody at least making some kind of claims, and this was a scientific study. They also compared other major disasters like the tsunamis that occurred and the Bali bombing, Katrina. These are all events that had an impact on tourism. Are those fair comparisons?
I don't like to make those comparisons just because of the death of so many innocent people. Right. While we did lose 11 rig workers here, the other catastrophes had a lot of civilian casualties associated with the tsunami, with the Katrina. You know what we saw, the visuals. So yes, there are very bad comparisons to make. But I can draw some analogy in the sense that when an economy is so devastated just by one single blow, well, how does it recover, and what's the longest it can occur? In this instance, I think longer than those catastrophes, because that was a one-time, here it is, event.
Right.
Here you have more of an ongoing thing, much like the live feed in the spill. I mean, every day it provoked what? Anger and concern, and of course a greater exposure.
Now, of course, tourism always has the trickle-down effect, so it's when the tourists don't show up, you don't have the money that goes out to these other people. Now, from a litigating point of view, you have to really seek, I mean, cancellations are the things that are really like the proof du jour that tourism has been hurt. A hotelier says, I had 100 cancellations right after the oil spill.
Right, and you know, there's abuse in every system. So one of the things that has to be sorted out, did they have a cancellation because the hotel was in bad shape and people simply wanted to go elsewhere? Are they using this as an excuse, the particular claimants or group of claimants? Or is it, and I seem to indicate most of the time it's the latter, people that genuinely have had cancellations associated with the oil spill. Yeah. Kathy Katzler came down to Tampa and was kind enough to meet with me in my office, and we talked about this Oxford study. And what is undeniable is the perception. The perception that our beaches are spoiled. That's what we're really fighting with now. And it may be a reality, but certainly the perception is a reality. That is, people think, well, let's don't go to Florida. If we can go somewhere else, let's take the safe alternative. And that's hurting us badly. And the economic downturn aggravates it, so it's like a synergistic effect. Does that make sense?
I mean, it does.
We're getting hurt. We would have been hurt anyway, but the economic downturn coupled with this perception and the oil spill, the actual physical oil spill consequences, bad business for Florida.
Right, and lastly, we've only got a couple of seconds.
Sure.
They suggest that the way you can mitigate some of this damage is by putting aside a $500 million advertising budget, and if you use that over the next 3 years, you could cut it by $7.3 billion, the bad effects of the oil. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense, but what does make the simplistic sense is they've got to put money on the problem. There has got to be money on the problem. In other words, mitigation has to occur or the damages will be worse.
Boy, what a complicated mess this is. Thank you, stop by, Steve, because you always give us information that keeps us up to date with what's going on. Steve Yerrid, Special Counsel for the Governor on the oil spill. Good talking to you.
Good talking to you.
You may remember one local prominent business is blaming the oil disaster for a horrible summer. The owners of Hubbard's Marina say business went down 50 to 60% after the oil-related ban on fishing along Gulf beaches. And we told you last night the boat company has filed for bankruptcy. It's also filed a complaint with BP to try and recoup some of its losses. The Deepwater Horizon spill is the largest offshore spill in U.S. history. Oxford Economics also says the impact of that disaster will likely last well past the resolution of the crisis. Researchers say the lasting impact is mostly due to brand damage and traveler misperceptions. That same group recommends the establishment of a $500 million emergency marketing fund to counter those misperceptions and encourage travel to the affected regions. Now, to combat the notion that oil has soiled Florida shores, Governor Charlie Crist has just announced a brand new ad campaign aiming to get tourists back to the beach. Today, the governor announced $700,000 will go towards speeding up the economic recovery from the spill. The new campaign will encourage tourists to come to Florida for fishing tournaments and lots of festivals. And that's your In-Depth for this Wednesday. Each day, we take a close-up look at important issues of the day.